we do have a quorum.
To record and let's go.
Okay.
We're recording?
Recorded? All right.
Beautiful. Yep. see
Oh,
it.
all about our age and classes situation?
That was muted.
Oh, okay, good. So I love you, Mason.
Just turned off the
Okay,
meeting.
just turned off the meeting.
All right, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. It is 9:01. Any changes, questions about the agenda before we move forward? No. No, okay. Approval of the minutes, September 9 minutes. Any changes, any requested changes? And if not, a motion to accept?
I move to approve the September 9th minutes.
A second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Good morning,
Opposed?
Elliot.
All right, the motion passes. You know, you learn in military school, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late.
Wasn't I the coach of the New York Giants or something?
It's all good.
Yeah.
All easy stuff. And I don't think we have anybody for public comment yet. Okay,
9:02.
and nobody present. Okay, all right, then we will move on to unfinished business. Update on vacancies.
All right, LPN position is filled.
Yay.
That's awesome.
Yep, not easy to find them, but they are out there and we found one. So social worker position is posted and running. And all we had to do was provide the division of personnel with the description of the position. And that's a fully funded position, grant funded
Grant,
position.
mhm.
Yeah. So we'll see if we get any good people for them.
Any questions? All right,
Right here.
none here. All right, we'll move on to Cox Holiday Inn. Charlie.
Charlie, do you have an extra copy of the financials?
Yes, they are. The entire packet's in there.
Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. We have the August and statements and then the September preliminary statements. Start with August and go over the key metrics.
Sorry, I'm late. Good morning.
As of August 31st, bank balance is $690,000, and we are within our reserve requirements. Accounts receivable sits at $108,000, and 71,800 of that is due to the Board of Health from West Virginia Treasury.
Right. There's a decrease in cash from last year, and there's a sharp increase in the receivable. Is that, I mean, the decrease in cash is small percentage-wise, but the increase in the receivable is huge. It's like it's quadrupled. Is there any particular reason for that?
Well, most of it's just waiting for the state of West Virginia to give us the threat prep money.
Okay.
So over 90 days, there's $63,000.
That's half, that's more than half.
So as of August 31st, 67% of the receivable balance is due to West Virginia Treasury.
And they have a $1.3 billion revenue surplus. So, wonder what's taking them so
Is
long.
the threat prep not yet approved?
It's going through the approval process, and I don't think
And
we've
we're going to see
seen
the numbers change a little bit in September.
This is for
Right.
the new one, like a new grant. This was
the
last.
new
This was
fiscal
last
year
year.
grant. Yeah.
Yeah, since
The fiscal year 23 grant. Yeah.
there is a change from August to September where that $63,000 is no longer,
Yeah, correct.
you received it.
Yeah, it came in
Down to
September.
12,000.
Yeah, it came in September.
Even though it was for the previous fiscal year or this fiscal year?
It's still not the threat prep for fiscal year 23. It's payments out that we were expecting, that we've been billed, that we have billed for that we finally received payment for.
Okay. But for fiscal year 23 or 22?
The end of fiscal year 22, yes. So those are the final bills for that. We're finally receiving payment for those final billings.
Okay, so we still book them for 23 and not retroactively book them for 22?
So they've already been booked for 22.
But we just got the cash,
We just got
actually.
the
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Got it. All right, thank you.
So that takes us through over the key metrics for August as far as the year-to-date, total revenue, almost $55,000. Salaries and wages, $149,000. And expenditures, $26,000. So that gives us a deficit of $20,600. So overall, total revenue is below target by 7%, salaries and wages below budget by 4%, and total operating expenditures below budget by 6%. Again, that is for August. Any
That's it.
questions on August?
But $20,000 deficit, that's just for the month, or is that cumulative?
That is year
year-to-date?
to date.
Okay.
All right, September key metrics. We did see a decrease in bank balance, about $600,000, but we are still within the reserve requirements. We were saying that the conservative reserve amount would be $290,000, and we're above that by $315,000. And then we're gonna see a big shift in our receivables. We do have an increase in accounts receivable as of September, $161,000 compared to the $107 that we had in August. And this is still mainly due to what is owed to us from West Virginia Treasury, but we're gonna see a shift. Like most of the receivable due to us is now only 1 to 30 days. It's current, and majority of the order stuff has been received and paid. So as a percentage, 75% of the receivable balance is West Virginia Treasury, and everything else they're smaller amounts that do not meet that are less than 10%. And then September, just to go over the month of September alone, we had revenue of $118,000, salaries and wages $79,000, operating expenses $42,000, and overall that gives us a deficit for the month of September of $2,800. Year to date, total revenue $273,000, salaries and wages $28,000, operating expenses $68,000. That gives us an overall deficit of $23,000. If we compare that to what has been budgeted, total revenue is below our target budget of by 7%. Total salaries and wages below budget by 6%, and total operating expenses below budget by 5%. So we're revenue, we see most of that towards the end of the fiscal year, so being below by 7%, I would say is reasonable at this point. And salaries, all the other expenditures pretty much on target, below what we budgeted.
Thank you, Charlie.
Any questions?
Anyone else? Is there a motion to accept the August 2022 financial report?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
I abstain.
Let the record reflect 4 ayes, 1 abstention. Thank you, Charlie. Agency reports. Health administrator.
Don't have too much to say. I know we've talked about the internet project that's been lingering. Still waiting for 2 components. They're both switches and server switches, combination switches, and I've received everything else. So once those 2 things come in, we can set it up and we'll be running at about 100 megs. Obviously, I talked earlier about the audit, so we had 1 bid out of the 6, and we'll sign off on that and get the fiscal year 22 audit done and started. And I brought up last week, if And I'm curious if any of the Board of Health members attended the ethics trainings that was available in Martinsburg this past month? No one? Okay.
I did.
You did? Well done. That's awesome. You can do it online. They offer it, but they do not offer Open Meetings Act training. That only occurs in person. So, but you can do the regular ethics training on the West Virginia Ethics Commission website.
I already did mine years ago.
Yeah, so I'm sure some
Lobbying
people have been on other,
registrations.
yes, exactly. You're under much different rules in your professional position. I understand that. So that's the only things I really have. It's fun stuff.
Yeah, I don't remember the handout you gave me last month or us, an online, is it in there?
That's fairly new. Yeah, I
Okay.
think hadn't seen that until I looked this month.
Okay,
So I think that's something they posted at the end of September.
okay, so I'll look for it.
Yeah, check it out.
That's helpful.
It's like a 44-minute video. It's real easy.
Any questions for Gino? All right, we'll move on to Dr. Reedy.
So we'll start with our epidemiology presentation.
Yeah, that's the old computer. It's slow.
All right, so just going over the general COVID numbers, the shift from what we've seen last month to now. So September 1st, you can see we're kind of have a lot more red and yellow, where now we're kind of more in the green zone, which is great. Community level specifically for West Virginia, you can see generally the same trend shifting from red to yellow, from more green, and Jefferson County is green, so we're shifting in the right direction. So looking more at the numbers, so specifically Jefferson County, we have 131 new weekly reported cases per 100,000. Last month it was double that, so we went down almost 100,000. We have 8.8 admissions per 100,000 people within the hospital, and then last month it was 14.3. 5.2% of patients in hospitals are patients with COVID. Last month it was 8.4, and 7.3% of the population has at least one vaccine.
What percentage?
78.3 in Jefferson County.
At least one.
And so this kind of just talks about the general shift from last month to now, which is pretty significant in some areas. The vaccine is slowly going up. At this point, we've kind of done the first and second rounds, and now we're just doing boosters. This does just look at the one dose, though.
Where are we getting this data from?
So this is all from the CDC or from the HHR.
HHR from West Virginia or
Yes.
or federal?
Yep, from West Virginia.
So if the person get the vaccine from out of state, does it report back to us?
No, unfortunately.
So there are two different databases. The one DHHR has, that they get the numbers reported back as soon as vaccines are given by what they give out. Other people who get a vaccination out of state gets reported to the CDC,
That's what I
and
was
then those
thinking.
numbers come back, but there are discrepancies.
Lot slow.
They're not, huge discrepancies, but if you start getting and comparing, then they are differences. And of course, that's a much bigger issue where we're situated compared to Webster County or somewhere else, where pretty much all the vaccines are given within the state.
So
The drugstores, most of them get, big chains get it from the federal supply, and it doesn't, so there's some differences. But the trends are pretty similar comparing one county to the next, one state to the next.
thank you for jumping in there, Ian. But so where does the CDC, how does the CDC know what goes on in Jefferson
So the
County?
CDC will get reports from HHR, but then they're a federal organization, so they also get more broad data outside of specifically.
can understand it, but what's the mechanism by which,
When you do the vaccine, you fill out a form and they supposed to report that.
And same with your COVID card as well.
your COVID card?
Yeah. Like that data is in the system.
All right, so President Biden says that the pandemic is over. Is that, would you agree with him?
That's not an issue we can deal with. There's no specific definition of when a pandemic starts or stops. That's as far as in public health. So that's a definition issue, and that becomes a controversial, divisive issue that's been discussed for a year now in public health. At what point do we say it's no longer a pandemic? That only matters if it leads to a change in action. And so even calling it pandemic or not does not change. The big issue is whether it's still under an emergency as far as triggering federal responses and legalities.
I was just asking for a qualified opinion.
Yeah, at what point
That's all.
if the pandemic becomes endemic is
Not asking for
it's not
official.
clear, because you know that retrospectively. At what point does it become winter? At what point does it become spring? At what point is dinner over? You know, so it's a physical satisfaction, physically better, but it's also an emotional. And clearly emotionally, people are done with being a pandemic. Our behaviors have gone back largely to what they were before. As far as number of cases, the disease has not gone away, and no one is suggesting that. We still have far more cases, but it's no longer a brand new thing that's happening. And at what point you decide it's become endemic as opposed to pandemic, because this is a new disease.
So anyway, I sent an email around to everybody on the board and about Pfizer admitting that there wasn't adequate testing. In fact, they didn't test to see if the vaccines stop transmission. It was admitted by Pfizer before the European Union Parliament, and I sent that out to everybody. So my question now is, there are now issues emerging regarding the safety of these vaccines. So we're getting this data of how many people get them. What are we doing to track the potential adverse effects of these vaccines and to see if they are safe, because they were not properly tested? Clearly they were not.
So that's an opinion.
It was Pfizer's
No, it's an
statement, in fact.
opinion of whether things have been done properly or not. That's beyond, what I can discuss, because it becomes, an
So then
argument.
let's discuss what we can do to track the possible adverse effects from these, because there's emerging patterns that I've seen in reports that these vaccines may not be safe.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So you can measure it by the patient going to their doctor and they show this, they listed their symptom.
We
and
can,
the
but
doctor-
do we?
Yes. I
Where's the
recently,
data?
well, they're still collecting, so, it doesn't come out.
Where can
right
I
when
see
they
it?
need it.
But wouldn't it be
Let's go
with
to the
any
CCD.
practitioner? Like any practitioner on any drug, if they are given something and you
They
have an
follow
adverse
up.
reaction, then your medical practitioner, A, diagnoses it, and B, whatever mechanisms are to report back an adverse reaction. So whether that's a Tylenol or a
Yeah.
vaccine or anything in
Well,
between.
there's a system maintained by the CDC called the VAERS system. That's a national aggregate.
They do report.
Are we doing anything to see what's happening in Jefferson County? That's what I want.
Okay.
Because
the
we're
doctor-
administering these vaccines, right? Shouldn't we be tracking the people that we
Yes.
give them to see if they're okay?
My doctor asked me that question, did you have your vaccine? Yes, did you have any adverse, reaction? Yeah,
But
I
where-
went recently.
I
Actually, I have
understand.
to go.
But not
follow up
everybody,
to
not
the-
everybody goes to a practitioner. And also the Board of Health is one practitioner of many who have administered these vaccines, so they're going to, hey, now, are we tracking people's adverse reactions? I
Where
don't
can we
think.
find the numbers of
How would you
adverse
do it?
reactions? Tell
The
me.
CCD.
So the issue becomes, how do you decide it's an adverse reaction to the vaccine as opposed to something someone experienced subsequent to having
Well,
the vaccine?
that's up to you, but I'd like to know what the numbers say. I don't want to get involved in the qualitative here and the opinions. These vaccines are being administered. There are reports out there that they may not be safe. I want to know what the data show.
I'm afraid we don't have a huge numbers of adversity. They're not gonna release a number anytime soon.
So if we,
Unless there's emergency, they're like, okay, we need to stop this medication, then you know, otherwise it's gonna be.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. I mean, the CDC has refused to release the data. So what does that tell you? Does that mean that, can you then say to somebody, oh yeah, the CDC doesn't want you to know, and the FDA didn't want you to know, and because they wanted to hide for 75 years what's in the vaccines. So what does that tell you?
Can we
about
FOIA
this?
them, Dr. Beatty?
no.
Well, I don't think it's the role of the Jefferson County
So
Board of Health to FOIA
I'm not
the
saying no.
CDC.
We need
I'm not
good
saying no.
information. We need good information.
So
I'm a data wonk.
FOIA it, Elliot.
Well,
FOIA it.
Well, what are we doing to follow up with what we're administering
So
as a health
what
department?
we do is we look at what individual people report to us and decide whether it's, so if someone calls us and said, my arm is sore, so that's a known side effect. You know,
But so is
and-
myocarditis.
wait, let me finish. And if they, then we ask, how sore, is it interfering, when did it, is it better? So there's an occasional person who is very worried about some redness in the arm, will say, come on in, let's look at it. And if somebody has an issue that they think is due to the vaccine, that's something unusual and serious, that would be something we would report. If they would contact us. If a practitioner sees somebody, they also should be reporting it.
Right.
But that does not imply cause and effect.
But there are categories. I would like to see if there's any reported, what the reports say.
So
Then maybe I can decide.
the reports, the problem with the statistics, if I would say that we looked at this and it turns out that most of the people who developed such and such illness went to such and such football game. But it turns out most of the population went to that football game. Then you say, well, how about the people that didn't go? So if you're not also tracking those who were, if you're comparing one group and another, you have to look at the data in both groups. The reports to VAERS are only in the people who got the vaccine. Where that's helpful is not in common things like I felt tired. Those you get from other ways of studying it. It's when something very strange happens, and what happened in Europe and then here with not the mRNA vaccines, but the vaccinia, the adenovirus vaccines, is that they found these unusual clots in the brain that hardly ever occur. And they were seeing a few of them, and they said, this is odd. And so that led to stopping the AstraZeneca vaccine for a while in Europe. It ended most of the interest in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine here. So it was detected from very few cases.
You mentioned the VAERS database. There are recorded in the VAERS database for these vaccines over 30,000 deaths in the VAERS database.
So we have.
Doesn't that raise a red flag that maybe we should look into whether or not these things are safe or not?
So The information.
From a societal perspective, but for the Board of Health, I think it's outside the scope of what this organization does.
Right.
Well, that I understand, but
Right.
What's
all
it-
I'm
so why are-
asking,
Well,
all I'm
to that
asking.
point, then why are we
Why are we
discussing it?
having, yeah,
Well,
why
my
are we
question
pursuing
is
this?
what is the Department of Health doing to track what,
But
how
data
the
collections.
people are doing that got administered here? That's all. Is there a mechanism
But
where
it's just-
somebody can
It's- I
report
can
back
answer
to
this.
us?
Okay.
What part of the agenda item allows you to discuss that?
Well,
That's not the agenda item. Dr. Reedy is a person.
no, but there's a question, he is giving a report, and I'm allowed to ask him.
What
about it.
item on the agenda allows you to discuss this?
The health officer report, when he starts discussing vaccines.
Does it? It allows you to ask if we can have a new data collection tool?
No,
No. So can we move to the next agenda item, please? Or can you finish
Can
reporting?
I respond to that one
Yeah.
item? So my concern of 20,000 people dying is, I'm concerned. If we have 70+% of people have been vaccinated in the population, say, well, what is the population of the US? How many people die every year? So in the United States, over 3 million people die every year. And you're saying 20,000 have died after getting, have been reported as dying.
Over
after
30.
getting- Of course, that many, because more than half the population has gotten it. So I expect far more people who have gotten the vaccine have died. Now, if someone dies of anaphylaxis here while we're giving it, that's a pretty clear cause and effect. Not 100% certain, because there could be other things, but it's pretty likely. If you died 2 months later and you were 95 years old and were pre-existing ill, I'd say there may not be a relationship. Same with if they got COVID 2 months earlier and then died, and they were already on hospice services before they got COVID. So the cause and effect of what causes death is something we determine in each person that dies. So am I concerned? Yes, but the way the VAERS data is collected, it's anyone can report, any doctor can report. It does not mean it's cause and effect.
And the
So-
responsibility here is the same as any practitioner administering any medication, whether it's this vaccine or beyond.
Right. And so we're concerned, but.
Let's continue on with the report, please.
All right, so looking at COVID-19 in the Jefferson County School District, this is just looking at the schools that we have within the county and the percent of these students that have it. It's obviously, you can see very low. This reflects the cases that are reported to the school. So there are a proportion of cases that are not reported to the school that are not considered. So that should just be taken into consideration as well. Talking about the vaccines that Jefferson County is offering right now with flu season coming up, it's offering flu shots. You call in, schedule an appointment. And with COVID, we are offering the Omicron booster clinics. And Dr. Reed?
So influenza, which we did not see, trying to see the data. We saw very few cases of flu this past year. I can't see the numbers on the side. We're starting to see a few cases now. We will have to see. I wouldn't say it has started. It's not as predictable as, well, maybe winter's not predictable anymore either, but it's a natural phenomenon and I don't know when it will happen. We'll be looking at that, and should we see a huge uptick in cases, we let people know. There could be a big flu season, there may not be. Every year's different. But it is something we expect this year to be back to how it used to be. Next. So this is West Virginia, again, a few cases, and these are, it used to be that flu-like illness pretty much meant flu. Now flu-like illness is COVID until proven otherwise, but that could change greatly this year. So next. Wastewater sampling. So all of these different things give us some idea of the prevalence of a disease in the community. wastewater sampling is something new that technology allows us to do. Charlestown Public Utilities sends their sample to the state and it is tested for COVID. As far as what we do with this information, it's one other idea that gives an idea of the prevalence. If we saw cases going up and other indicators said it goes up, we'd say, yeah, this is further evidence. Right now, it's relatively low. The incidence in the community's not been low, but it's better. So it's interesting. It's just one piece of data, just like the school numbers are pretty low. So that's good. Next.
Is it only Charlestown that sends it in?
A
or
number
does
of,
JT
a number of
JT
places do throughout the state and the nation. Berkeley
Much sewage.
Berkeley is not, Shepherdstown is not. I don't know if it's by invitation that you send it or.
I see.
What's being tested in the wastewater?
So they're testing for the
Mine might be
nucleic
glad to
acid
ask the question.
of COVID. In New York, in some counties in New York, they're also testing for polio, and so this could be something that's used in the future to find out what's going on in the population. But it's new. This, I would say, is truly experimental in that we don't know, but it's interesting information. In theory, you could, say, we're gonna test an apartment building and see, then we get into all sorts of expense and everything else. So it's interesting. So that's the only reason for it. Monkeypox cases have gone down worldwide. It's a number of new cases. Sort of wasn't our expectation. There have been vaccines in the high-risk group. So why it's gone down, not sure, but we're glad to see it go down. We have given some vaccines, though not many lately. But then Ebola is increasing in Africa. This is increased, so hopefully not have any of that coming yet.
That's the one we should be really, really scared.
Excuse me?
That's the one we should be really scared.
Yeah, a lot of, so right now, a lot of our efforts now are influenza vaccinations and the Omicron boosters, as well as our usual family planning program, sexually transmitted infection, screening and treatments. Waiting on a couple of grants to be reviewed so we get started with this quick response team.
Thank you.
So no Gillian today. You looked at me like.
Yeah, I figured you might cover
Do
her,
the
but I know we have the
environmental.
document.
So, yeah, we have the document. There's a couple numbers missing and in and around permitting and inspection numbers, but inspection numbers for restaurant inspections have gone up and permits are still level.
I was gonna
It's
say
not-
that the septic and well is still high.
Still very high. Yep. Building is still active in this county. There's still a lot
Yeah.
of people coming in for permits on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And within the next few weeks, we'll have our main food inspector out in the field. She's just wrapping up her final few days of training, and she's passed her first few tests. So she's going to be out there. She's quite smart, and she's going to be a great representative for us in the community.
What is mass gathering permit?
Mass gathering permits. Okay, so if you
No,
have
which one, like what is gathering?
Magic the Gathering? No, I'm sorry.
What?
I knew you would
I
dig
missed
that. So, no, mass gathering. So if there's any type of like festivals.
No, I know what it is. I'm
Okay.
saying, what was this one?
Oh,
like-
there was a couple different ones recently. There was the big African American Heritage Festival one in
Oh, okay.
Charlestown. There's going to be the parade coming up. That'll have to
Do we
have
have
a
to
mass.
inspect that?
If they have food service, yes.
Okay.
Probably arts and crafts.
Arts and crafts, that's
Yeah,
it.
so
So
if
I'm
they
sure
have-
they're trying to think.
If they have
like,
food service,
Yeah,
yes.
food service,
Yeah,
okay,
so if
got
they're
it.
bringing food trucks and that type of stuff,
Thank
yes. Yep, or an open pit barbecue or whatever, that all has to be inspected.
Got it. Thank you.
Are the short-term rentals,
They're
Are
still
they
coming
coming
in,
in?
we're still pressing them, and they're still coming in, and
is there still?
no one's doing it voluntarily anymore. That's ended.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Is it, I mean,
This is
the-
us going after them.
Oh.
I don't want to do that, but they are required by the state of West Virginia, and we are required by the state of West
Right.
Virginia to.
Has moratorium expired?
The moratorium expired, it slowed down towards the end of it. There was not a big burst right at the end or anything like that. The people who were going to permit their properties, they've already permitted their properties. The ones who don't want to permit their properties, we're looking to make sure that they understand that they're
How do you
required.
find them?
We go on to Airbnb and we
Oh.
reach out to them directly through Airbnb and tell them we have their property and their lot number and their tax record, and that they're required to, by the state of West Virginia, to be permitted.
Because there's some short-term rentals that are not Airbnbs.
Yeah, we
They're-
also
they're-
use Vrbo, we also use others. It's not just Airbnb. And we have one of our OAs one of our office assistants taking care of that right now. And it's not easy work, and it's definitely, we would prefer people, be voluntarily do it and do it out of their civic responsibility, but many are not.
What to do if they refuse to?
If they refuse?
register?
If they refuse to register, we are accumulating a list of that, and we'll go to Nathan with that. And we'll
Have
shut
you
them
had
down.
anybody refuse?
Not yet.
Good. That's-
Just like any restaurant, hotel, motel, anything that refuses to be permitted by the state of West Virginia, they can be shut down.
Just for the new guy here, Nathan is.
Nathan Cochran is the county prosecutor, the
Staff.
Yeah,
Yes,
he's a
he's-
staff prosecutor.
He's been here. He was here last month.
He's usually sitting.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay, thank you. Appreciate that. He actually
He's
works
our
in the
lawyer.
Prosecutor's office, I don't know if you call him a prosecutor. 'cause I haven't seen
No.
him do it.
He works in the prosecutor's
Yeah.
office, yes.
Yeah, he's assigned to different agencies, so we're
Yeah.
one of the agencies
Okay, that's
as our,
helpful.
as our legal counsel.
Yeah, he's the county commissioner's legal counsel.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you. Helpful.
Threats?
Stevie today.
So we just wrapped up the active shooter training. It was
It was-
actually,
It was
Those are really good.
excellent.
yeah,
It was
really good
excellent.
experience. Those guys know exactly what they're doing.
We were all there at the same time and I highly recommend it. It was very, very nice.
Well, did you do it? Or you did it before?
I'm gonna do it with them.
So
They're talking about the master.
Yeah, active shooter.
We're gonna do it this school.
they,
Wow,
That's right.
cool.
they are still offering the class. I can get you the contact. It's Nathan Harmon, who's the sheriff for Berkeley County.
Berkeley.
If you contact for it.
Yeah, do you mind emailing me that information?
Yeah, no problem. And then the only other thing was that we participated in Smoking Mountain's functional exercise. You might recall the tabletop exercise from a couple months ago. This is just a step above that, where you involve much more of like your equipment, your communications. And it builds towards a full-scale exercise where the first responders are actually going to go out into the field and respond to the fake fire. And we had a couple of health department injects put in where we would respond by giving out vaccines to like nursing homes and places like that.
All right, any questions? All right, our next meeting is actually November 18th, which is the third Friday, because November 11th is the second Friday, which is a federal holiday to celebrate and thank our veterans.
Can I make an agenda request that we have a permanent Q&A on the agenda so that
Permanent Q&A for what?
whenever there's a report, there can be a Q&A.
Well, there can be a Q&A, but we're debating CDC and data collection, which was not part of the agenda. That's
Oh,
not
so-
Q&A, that's debate
Well, it's,
over an agenda item that we have no authority over or responsibility.
well,
towards.
it was asking questions about the source of the data and then.
Well, no, it was actually asking why we weren't collecting data, or what were we doing to collect data, and the question was answered. And then it continued on a debate over what should be done.
No, I didn't do that.
Hey, the great thing is, it's recorded, you can watch it back.
Okay, that's good.
Would this be like the British Parliament?
Yeah.
Order.
Can
Or
we,
the
what's
U-
going
EU
on
Parliament
outside here?
works.
I see.
Okay, I can answer that. So the heads of all the agencies here in this building, we were unhappy with the way the berm looked. So we spoke with the county administrator and the county maintenance director, And the two of them agreed that they would be removing the berm and replacing it with landscaping. So they're going to plant it. It's going to be much more appropriate. I think you were probably a part of that a little bit, right?
Good, I've been.
You had heard about it, yeah. So, yeah, so that's the deal. I don't think they're going to plant it going into winter.
Sure.
I think that'll look a lot nicer in the spring.
So I'm sorry, which berm?
So there's a
Over
berm
there?
that goes up to the sides of the building. So what they do is
okay.
they're going to remove that, flatten it out, and then landscape
Gotcha.
in front of the building. So it's going to, hopefully it'll be boxwoods and annuals and stuff like that. That'll be nice.
Right.
It'll look great.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I
So
move
moved.
we adjourn.
Second, I guess I'll take, Anna's the second.
second.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Thank you all. We'll see you
Thank
next
you.
month.
This might